Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can get more information and listen to previous shows on our website, which is behind me, www.blainesworld.net. There it is. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information that people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Jake LaRue with the Man with a Horse Project. And Jake, you feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. Okay. And I got to say, I like your background. You're right in the fields there with those are Mustangs behind you?
They are. That is LaRue and Caesar out of the Sandwash Basin in Colorado. They're both Mustangs.
Oh, so they're actual Mustangs, and
Yep, they are.
You knew them. And I should mention that Jake.
I've adopted them. They're actually they're in my care these days.
Very cool. Jake is the man with a horse project. I love that title. Horse professional and Marine Corps veteran with a mission to share the healing power of horses with other veterans. He is certified in equine facilitated learning through the Hero Institute and is EGALA certified and military designated. Jake has been serving the veteran community in Western North Carolina for 10 years, currently works out of Shaman Hill Center in Alexandria, North Carolina. He's available to serve as an equine specialist for individual and group session demonstrations. And in addition, does workshops and retreats as a consultant on working with equines and the military veteran population. He is passionate, as I think he'll say in just a second, about helping wild Mustangs, and has adopted 2 horses himself. Horses are definitely a big part of his life and mission. And Jake, those are the horses you adopted behind you?
Those are the 2 I've adopted behind me. The blonde is LaRue and the gray is Caesar. They are brothers. They have the same sire. His name is Centauro. He's a legend out on the Sandwash Basin in Colorado, and they were born 3 months apart by different mares. But they've been together the whole lives. So when they got rounded up by the Bureau of Land Management and were up for adoption, it seemed right to try to do the best we could to keep them together.
So where do they hang?
They are currently living at the Middle Way Sanctuary, and my friend Lori Araki is taking care of them. They're out in Colorado, in Fairplay, Colorado. The Middle Way Sanctuary has a beautiful program for rescuing horses and adopting Mustangs and providing therapeutic services to anybody, including veterans. I think their stated mission is to provide a sanctuary for both humans and horses.
So do you ever get to see them?
I do. I try to get out several times a year, and I'm hoping to eventually move them here in North Carolina. But they need to get to a certain stage in comfortable development where they're going to be okay with that kind of travel. I don't want to put them through cross-country stress until they're at that point.
As a kid, where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Florida.
Okay.
A place called Dania Beach.
The reason I ask, as a kid growing up in South Florida, were you always into horses?
Not at all. Not at all. I was a beach kid. I grew up fishing, and I grew up swimming, and I think I could probably swim before I could walk. I used to play with sailboats and raced sailboats, and I didn't have any involvement in horses at all until about 10 years ago.
Oh, really? What brought that on?
Well, I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and I'm one of those guys that didn't do a really good job at readjusting to civilian life. And I had some issues, got in a lot of trouble, made a bit of mess of things. And I moved to Asheville to plug in with some therapy, and got here because of the VA. The Charles George VA Medical Center is awesome. I'm never going to not promote them. As much criticism as the VA comes under, that particular medical center is amazing, and I credit their therapist with helping me turn my life around. And as a result of that, I got involved with mindfulness practices, meditation, that sort of thing. So I went to a meditation retreat at Hot Springs at a place called Southern Dharma. Yeah. And I met Shannon Knapp, who was the founder and executive director of Horse Sense of the Carolinas and started Heart of Horse Sense, the nonprofit. And, if you hang out with somebody sitting next to them in silence in meditation for 5 days, you can honestly get to know them really well without any conversation. And Shannon and I became friends, and she invited me out to see what she does at her farm with equine therapy, Horse Sense of the Carolinas. I had no experience with horses, but people talk about that remote road to Damascus experience. When I came out there and met horses, I had one of those. It was the "where has this been all my life" thing, and I've not done anything else since.
How long were you in the service?
I was in the service 4 years active duty.
Okay. And so, which is really cool. So we came out, did you come out and go to Asheville, or you had a whole bunch of things in between?
No, I had a lot of years in between, and did a lot of really dumb things, and got in a lot of trouble, and made a big mess out of my life. I just didn't adjust well. I ran 100 miles an hour into any wall in front of me. Some of them broke, and some of them didn't.
And so after you then discovered Asheville, or you came to Asheville, it sounds like your life changed, started turning around.
Drastically, drastically. I came here from New Orleans, and full disclosure, I had gotten in some trouble and was in jail in Orleans County, and I got out on a Friday and was on my way to North Carolina on a Sunday. My mom actually came down and picked me up when I got out of jail. Says, you need to make some decisions. So we came up to North Carolina, and she helped me get into a program that would help straighten my life out. I've been here ever since.
And so how'd the horse organization come into play then? Who introduced you to it?
Shannon Knapp from Horse Sense of the
Right,
Carolinas. After I'd been here for about 8 months, I went to the meditation retreat in Hot Springs, and that's
right.
where I met Shannon.
Oh, okay.
She told me about Horse Sense of the Carolinas and what they were doing and how they're helping people. And I had no idea. I mean, no experience with horses, no idea at all. But she invited me out to meet them. When I came out to meet them, it was a life-changing experience. The light bulbs went on, and horses have become, in all of my healing process and all of the things that I've learned, the whole wheel of processing my healing, horses have been the center hub that it's all revolved around ever since then.
Talk
And
about
I
that then.
decided very quickly after that this is the way that I want to give back to my community and my tribe. This is what I want to share with them.
Talk about the fact that they are a healing aid to you. How so? Why horses?
Oh man. So I think horses are spiritual beings as well as physical beings. I think they exist in two planes. Um, they see both the spirit and the physical when they look at us. Even the way that their eyes work on the sides of their head, where they don't have a direct visual in the front or the back, but they contain so much on either side. I think they see us um, as both ourselves in the human realm and ourselves in the spiritual realm and the soul realm. And when it comes to working with veterans and victims of trauma, I don't think of trauma like PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. I don't see it as a disorder. I see it as an injury. It's something that happened, not something that's wrong. And I think of it as a fracture of the soul. We've experienced this trauma that's shattered ourselves. And when horses look at us, they see both the body and the pieces apart. And through interacting with them, we can help reintegrate those broken parts of ourselves. They help us pull ourselves together.
And talk, if you would, you mentioned the idea of interacting. So how does one go about interacting with the horse?
Oh man, there's a thousand ways that can happen, but within my context of it, it's about inviting them to come to us, inviting them to participate in our world, trying to build trust, especially with the wild horses. I mean, these horses have been living their lives. My boys, I think, were 6 years old when they were rounded up, and they were chased down by helicopters and run into a chute. And their first interaction with horses and with humans was that, and being branded and castrated and clipped and vaccinated and then put into tight holding containment until a year later when they finally got auctioned off and we got to get them out and bring them to a sanctuary. There's a trauma connection there between veterans and horses. There's that I see you for what you've been through and they see us for what we've been through. We
Well,
recognize that in each other. And
even
when
as
we approach them and we connect with them, we have to put ourselves in a place where we can be trustworthy as the alpha predator on the planet, introducing ourselves to a prey animal that's had nothing but negative experience with people. How do we present ourselves?
how long does that take?
As long as it takes.
Okay, good answer. But can it happen quickly, or sometimes it takes a long time?
It can, and some people approach it with the intention of getting it done. And I think there's a concept that needs to be recognized when dealing with horses like this is do you judge your success on what you can do with your horse or how it feels about what you do? And I would prefer to build the consensual relationship than show tricks or effective training. So it takes as long as it takes. And some horses that are never going to get there. Some of them, especially the ones coming out of the wild, it's all about choice. I'm not going to ask any horse to do anything that it's not willing to do. It's all about choice. We're going to ask for consent. We're going to ask for choice. We're going to ask for participation. And there's a variety of ways to do that. And it's hard to talk about because it's more visual than explanatory. But we ask horses for consent. We ask horses for participation rather than using tools and force, fear, and intimidation to get desired results. I'd rather have a horse that'll just hang out with me than one that I can ride.
Okay. Are you curious? You mentioned that. So the ones behind you, do you ride them also, or they just hang with you?
Oh man, absolutely no riding involved in this now. The gray Caesar has recently consented to having the knots and tangles from the wild taken out of his mane and brushed out. The blonde, the LaRue, is not going to let much more than nose touches at this point. They've been out of the wild for a little over 2 years, and in their current location at the Middle Way Sanctuary in Colorado for about 10 months. And it's taking the time it takes. Some horses are really quick to develop, others take time. There are ways to force it. There are people that go about like, let me see how fast I can develop this Mustang. But for our purposes, we're not interested in that. We want them to be horses. We want to develop at their pace. We don't want to push them into anything that feels unnatural or uncomfortable to them. There's so much value therapeutically in letting them be the horse that they are and having people interact with them as the horse that they are, rather than trying to produce a usable horse.
Talk about the relationship, if you would, between especially Mustangs and veterans. What's the special kind of thing that takes place?
Oh man. Well, first and foremost, we've both veterans and Mustangs have a history of not being taken care of by the institution that says it's going to. Terrifyingly, in Mustangs, one of the real shames is there was a free roaming wild horse and burros act 1971 that said that Mustangs are free from harassment, roundup, branding, and captivity. And those are exactly the same practices that we engage in now in dealing with our wild Mustang population. In 1971, those were the same protections that were given to the American bald eagle. And we have not honored that when it came to our horses. So we now engage in regular roundups, branding, captivity, adoptions, and long-term containment and slaughter of our wild horses in favor of cattle industry. Cattle industry.
But it happened, like I said, in 1971. So I guess everybody was happy, or the people who were involved in the movement at the time were happy. Then what all of a sudden happened? It didn't go through.
Money. I really don't know how else to explain it than that. I don't know any other way to understand it than money. Is they were um, considered to be an icon of the the pioneer experience and the pioneer attitude of the American West. They were considered to be an icon of America. We've recently learned that they are not a species that was introduced by the Spanish, but they are native to here. We've got archaeological and DNA evidence that says that they've been here long before the colonies got here. So they're more of a reintroduced species now. But they were originally awarded 155 million acres of free roaming ground. They're now pushed back to 27 million acres of free roaming ground. The rest of the land is occupied by sheep and cattle. The people that lease public land are paying 200% less than the commercial rates to lease that land. It's like I said, I don't really want to get political about it, but it's a big scam on the taxpayer. We pay for the care of the land. We pay for the care of the Mustangs. We pay for the Mustang roundups. We pay for the Mustang holdings. We pay to adopt the Mustangs. In the meantime, all of that we're paying for gets leased out privately to cattle ranchers for profit. People say, well, America's got an addiction to cattle. Well, yeah, we do, but like 95, 98% of that gets exported. Most of the cattle we eat comes from the East Coast.
How many Mustangs are there, ballpark?
Currently, we assume there's about 80,000.
And
And the Bureau of Land Management's appropriate management level for horses right now, and we call it the arbitrary management level, is to bring them down between 16,000 and 27,000 horses. The curious thing about that is that was the exact same amount that we considered to be an endangered species in 1971 when we passed the act to protect them.
one time were there a lot more Mustangs?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I can't really say. I don't think there's ever been any studies at what time there was how many roaming prior to our attempted eradication of them.
So talk about, if you would, then, your involvement. So you were with that one organization for 4 years. You're on the board. You're active in that. Then what got you into starting your own organization for Mustangs?
I had a motorcycle accident. That's literally what got me into it. In April 2021, I laid down a motorcycle on a corner with gravel out in the street, and I almost lost my lower leg. I completely twisted my left leg up behind my head, and I was laid out for a long time. And while I was recovering from that, a friend of mine, LaRue, who is the executive director for a place in Colorado, Fairplay, Colorado, called the Middle Way Sanctuary. That's currently where my horses are. She's been my Mustang advocate. She sent me a photograph of the blonde horse in this picture and says, hey, here's this Mustang named LaRue. He's out at the Sandwash Basin in Colorado. And I started, while I was laid up recovering from my accident, I was in a hip to ankle cast. And I watched videos that I could find on YouTube. I followed everything that I could on Facebook to follow this horse. And the reason why, his name LaRue, my last name LaRue. Like, okay, cool. Let me follow this guy up. And I found out in September 21 that he was part of a huge roundup that Bureau of Land Management had in the Sandwash Basin in Colorado where he lived, and he was rounded up. And Lori sent me a post about it, sent me a message about it, and says, you know, you want to adopt a Mustang named LaRue. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to let this guy end up in the wrong place. I'm going to do what I can to provide him with a good home. So there was an online auction, and I started participating in the online auction and bidding on him. And I found out that he had a brother named Caesar, the gray guy in the photograph. And people were asking me, are you able to take care of both of them? Or can you provide them a home? And And I leased a little bit of space here from some horses for some horses in North Carolina. I figured, yeah, I could do that. And that discussion started, and I got in touch with a few other Mustang rescues, a place called For the Love of Aria and Rocky Mountain Mustang Refuge, and again, Lori with the Middle Way Sanctuary. And I got some sponsorship during the auction, and I ended up being able to adopt both of them to keep them together.
If you would,
They've
first of all, one thing I have to just back out on, which is so amazing. So that was his name before you met him, LaRue?
it was. Most Mustangs on the range don't have names,
Right.
but the Sandwash Basin is kind of a special place in that it has some great advocacy. There's people that really pay attention to those horses. And most horses that come through Bureau of Land Management just have like a 4-letter or a 4-number designation, like 8422,
Right.
which is actually one of my boys. But people that advocate in the Sandwash Basin, the ones who first see a foal born, they choose a name for it. So a friend named LaRue from a Cajun band, Louisiana LaRue. And I don't know who named Caesar or where his name came from, but that's why we know they have names, and they're tracked and followed from the wild up until the point they get rounded up or hopefully don't. But they're advocated for throughout their lifespan through this group, through this Sandwash Basin Advocacy Group.
And talk about this group as you're mentioning it. So what does it mean then? So these are your two boys, I like how you express that.
Mm-hmm.
What does that exactly mean? What do you do in terms of your role in this?
So they were, at the moment, I pay boarding for them and visit as often as I can. My friend Lori Araki is taking care of them at the Middle Way Sanctuary, and they are getting exposed to different people, to some positive reinforcement training, which is no ropes, no halters, no demands, just requests and rewards. It's a beautiful way of doing things with, especially with wild horses that we're trying to build trust with. I would love to get them here in North Carolina, but I would like them to be at a place where they're comfortable for travel before I do that. I don't want to put them on a trailer and run them 36 hours from Fairplay, Colorado to North Carolina. I'd like them to be okay with it, be able to get off the trailer, get on the trailer again for several days. I'd like to be able to reliably halter them and give them care without being a stressful thing for them. And like I said, it'll take the amount of time it takes. And if it doesn't take any, if it doesn't happen, they stay where they're at. They have a good life now.
Fast forward, if you would, to where you are now in terms of then starting this nonprofit. So it's something you had never done before, I assume.
No, I've been involved in one, but it's never my own.
So what got the idea to start your own?
I was invited to go to Colorado to help facilitate a veterans retreat at the Middle Way Sanctuary, which is the home of a group of wild Mustangs, or Mustangs out of the wild, called the Painted Ladies. At the time there were 3, now there's 4 generations of mares that came out of the wild: great grandma, grandma, mom, and daughter. I got invited to come out and participate in a veterans retreat in 2022, August 2022, and help facilitate. And engaging with those animals was just blew me away. Horses have a level of energy that resonates and affects our own energy, and wild horses put that out at such a huge level compared to people, compared to domestic horses, and the way that they interact with us is so different than domestic horses. I was blown away. I said, this is something I've got to share with other people. And we discussed it and planned on doing a second year with it. And in the meantime, I ended up adopting a few for myself. But I was so blown away by my experience with wild horses that I wanted to share it with other people.
Before you talk about the sharing with other people, describe something you mentioned. You said there were differences between wild horses and wild horses, domesticated versus wild, I guess. What are some of the differences?
Well, when it comes to the therapeutic context, equine facilitated learning, Domestic horses are familiar with people. They've interacted with people. They've spent their life around people. They know how to react and how to engage with people to get their needs met. So one of the things that I inevitably hear when I'm working with clients with domestic horses is, oh, it either likes me or doesn't like me based on the horse's reaction to me. It likes this or doesn't like this. And it's often personalized with the person as like the horse is reacting to me like this because this is a deficit with me. When we work with wild horses, that goes away. That whole concept goes away because now there's the awareness that this is an animal who is coming from a fearful perspective and coming from a lack of any interaction and experience with humans other than traumatic. It's not about it doesn't like me anymore, but how do I become likable? How do I become trustworthy rather than it doesn't trust me? It changes the context so that it takes the experience off of the person and feeling that they have a deficit or something is being reacted to them in a negative way and puts it on how do I approach this animal that I know is fresh out of the wild and I know has a different impression of me. There's also the fact that like I said, wild animals like those, animals that have been not raised in domesticity do not provide the same cues to get their needs met that animals that have been raised in domesticity does. Like, when your dog's acting cute, when your horse is acting cute. They want something. They're doing this to give it to provide a feedback from you. We don't get that with these other horses. We don't get that with horses out of the wild. What we're experiencing with them is an effort in making ourselves gentle and empathic and trustworthy and non-threatening, non-predatory.
Talking about this, using, if you can, you as an example. So how do you learn all this stuff? In other words, 10 years ago, you didn't know anything about horses. You weren't a horse guy. How'd you pick this up?
Yeah. I spent time with them. When I first started my horse experience, I would just go take a folding chair out in the pasture and watch them. I wanted to see how they talk to each other. I've had some good teachers along the way in how to better communicate non-verbally and physically with horses. They're the masters of body language. They don't miss anything. They as one veteran that I worked with said, if my internal and my external are not right, the horse is going to see that separation. I have to be correct. I have to be integrated, or I can't be close to this horse. I just watched them and I hung out with them, and I read and learned everything that I could, and I spent time with as many of them as I could, and it just became the thing that was the right thing for me to do.
Talk about you as an
I could
example.
learn what I could and share it with other people.
Well, I was just going to ask you that about your experiences or some of the people you work with. So how do they then take what they learn from the horses or get as a result of their work with horses, then bring it to the rest of their lives?
I don't really want to tell anybody else's story for their own
Right.
confidentiality, but I can tell you mine.
Please.
And it was really interesting, life-changing. I tell people that it kind of changed my perspective on every situation I've ever been in my life. I was at a horsemanship clinic, and there was this quarter horse, big gray quarter horse that was my first real close buddy and teacher. His name is Honor, and I was asking him to trot a pattern for me at the end of a lead rope as part of this clinic. And every time I would ask him to trot the pattern, he'd get a few steps in, and he'd stop and walk, and he'd stop and do whatever. And the School of Horsemanship that we're working with deals with body energy. You pick up your energy to make a request, you drop it when the request is met. And he just wasn't doing it. It just wasn't working. And I'm getting frustrated, and the instructor comes over to me and she says, "You need to learn how to drop your energy." said, I don't know what you mean by that. Well, when you make a request to the horse and he comes through with it, relax and through your body energy, show him that he's doing what you asked. And I wasn't getting it. Like, I am relaxed. Look at me. I've got this down. I'm relaxed. And she looks at me. She said, "Well, you're really not coming across that way." And clinic ended that day, and there's another day of it left. But I was a bit bothered by that, so I went home and I asked my wife, like, "Look, tell me something. Do I look relaxed?" And she's like, "Well, you know, I know you, so that's your relaxed." And I asked a couple other people about that. I'm like, "Come on, look at me. Am I relaxed right now?" Like, "Well, you're wound pretty tight most of the time, so I can see this being your relaxed." I'm like, "Well, damn." And I started thinking about the body language that I exhibited in situations that I walked in, and squared feet, squared shoulders, eyes front, heavy eye contact, just coming out of the military, coming out of the Marine Corps. That's just you know, firm handshake, face forward. It's not the way the rest of the world works. And it comes off intimidating. And when it comes to working with horses, it comes off in body language as yelling at them. And I'm asking this horse to do this pattern for me. And even though I think I'm relaxing, I'm still going, go, 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 go. It's kind of like ask your kid to take out the trash, and they picked up the trash bag and they're going out the door and you're still going, take out the trash, take out the trash, take out the trash,
I've been
take out
there,
the trash.
right?
Yeah. So it's one of those things. And I got thinking about that. I'm like, wow, I need how to learn how to drop that. But I got looking at that in my past relationships and my past job losses and all these situations in my past, because I did train wreck a lot of stuff. The energy that I brought in, I started to recognize the part that I played in so many of those situations because of what I brought into them and how I presented myself. So that one situation with the horse, along with many, many others, taught me what I look like to other people when I walk into the room, what I look like when I sit down and talk to somebody or stand there and talk to somebody, the kind of energy that I put off, uh, how to be gentler, more proactive, more positive, less aggressive, how to come off the way that I want to rather than the way that most people were perceiving me. And that changed my perspective on so many relationships and situations in my past because I recognized who I was then and not just the person I was encountering.
If folks want to get involved in this, in other words, your process took 10 years in terms of, different things you've done. How does somebody jump into this and wanting to work with horses, get therapy from horses? What do they do?
Well, you can contact me is the easiest way for me to give you a lot of other information on it. There's a bunch of resources. There's a lot of places here in Western North Carolina. I run retreats from here out to Colorado for veterans that are here and want to go experience wild Mustangs in the wild. There's Horse Sense of the Carolinas here that offers both groups and individual sessions for both veterans and civilians, for everybody. There's a lot of resources. You can reach me through my website, which is manwiththehorse.org, or
Wait, I'm sorry.
info@manwiththehorse.org.
Okay, manwiththehorse.org. Got it. That's the
Yep.
organization. And that'll have
Yeah.
all the contact information?
That's my website, and that has my contact info on it, or info@manwiththehorse.org.
Now, what about also, you mentioned before, you also do retreats, right? And
I do.
what does a retreat entail?
Well, the retreats that I host right now from Man with the Horse, we take veterans from around the country and we bring them out to the Middle Way Sanctuary in Colorado, and they get to experience both interaction with Mustangs that have come out of the wild or are in domesticity and in the process of gentling and learning. They get to work with domestic horses, horseback riding, equine facilitated learning, and they get to spend some time out on some retreat, on some refuge area, and actually witness and observe horses in their natural context, in their natural environment. Um, we provide to the best of our ability, the transportation, but we provide all the lodging and all of the experience at no expense to the veterans.
So if anybody has never done this before, would this also be appropriate? In others, you being an example, 10 years ago, you had no experience. Do you take people for the retreats or other programs that have no experience with horses?
Absolutely. No experience necessary. We'll work you through whatever you need to work through. Um, going in clean with no horse experience is sometimes the best way to do it.
Well, I guess there's no bad things to unlearn. I guess that right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Had-
You're going in clean. What was it? Suzuki Roshi said, in the beginner's mind, there are many opportunities. In the expert's mind, there are few.
Okay. And so if folks want to find out, take it then just what you mentioned, the best bet, find out about the project. So I guess overall, the umbrella thing is the website and the project you run.
Yep. The website is manwiththehorse.org, and the Veterans Retreat program is the Warriors and Wild Mustangs project.
And talk lastly about the fact that, so you run this, but you open it to other people, I guess, both in terms of participating, but can people volunteer to work with you or help you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to have help for both the promotional and administrative side of things, and the horse care, horse feeding, and grooming side of things. There's a lot that I could use help with. Um,
And so again, just go to the website, contact you, and you'll
yeah,
put into work.
please. Yeah, please contact me. I will reach back out. We started in February. We're brand new. We've been running on the graces of donations from the Veterans of Foreign Wars, District 17, and individual donors, and volunteer support. So any little bit helps at this point,
And,
both physically and financially.
and aside from you, are there any other folks helping you or involved in
There
this?
are, I always will have to put props out to Darren Eckert, who is an Air Force veteran and who has been my right hand from the go with this. He's a really good horse wrangler and a solid member of our support team. Lori Araki from the Middle Way Sanctuary, Shannon Knapp at Heart of Horse Sense. My wife, Derry Lane, is my treasurer for my nonprofit, and she makes sure that I don't do anything stupid with money. Yeah, I've got a lot of people behind me right now. I really appreciate them.
And again, if anybody,
Nicole Brown, who is a regular with horse feeding, and Nicole Brown is a phenomenal poet as well. So anybody wants to look up her books, For Those Who Were Our First Gods and Donkey Elegies.
and if anybody wants to get involved to add to that list, just get in touch with you. You'll put them to work.
Please, please, please.
Okay. And so I want to thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World podcast. Also to my producer, helped set up the show, Cappy Tassetti. And hopefully at some point in time, I'll get to see you or meet you, or especially when you have the two horses behind you. Hopefully down the road, the plan is to have them eventually be with you.
Yes, definitely. I'm hoping within the next year I'll be able to get back here in North Carolina.
Okay, that would be too cool. Anyway, thank you for being my guest. Thank you for all that you do. And hopefully, like I said, we'll meet sometime in the near future. Okay, man?
Thank you, Blaine. I appreciate you having me as a guest.
Okay,
It's
this
nice
is
to
very
meet
cool.
you.
Thank you.